If you've got your Bible, you can open it up to Proverbs chapter 9. Proverbs chapter 9. As many of you are probably aware, the book of Proverbs is a book of wisdom. And the first 9 chapters of Proverbs are laid out as a series of speeches from a father to a son. You can imagine a dad setting his son on his lap and saying, "Let me tell you about the world, little man. Let me tell you how things work. More specifically, let me educate you in the ways of wisdom." And so almost every chapter, especially in the first few chapters of the book, start with "my son, listen to my teaching, listen to my words." It is a father teaching his son in the ways of wisdom. One of the things I want us to take away from tonight is to leave here with the understanding that wisdom, everybody say wisdom. Wisdom is its own thing. In other words, wisdom is different than knowledge. Wisdom is different than learning. Wisdom is different than intellect. You don't have to score a perfect score on your SATs to be wise. In fact, one of the problems of our modern world is that we have conflated knowledge with wisdom. We have begun to believe that just because you have an advanced degree, just because you are smart and have a high GPA or a high IQ, that you automatically have wisdom. This is what leads to things that we see in our modern culture, like that of a Supreme Court justice who has read more books than I will ever read and knows the law better than any of us ever will, who probably scored higher than I did or any of us did on her standardized tests. But when asked the question, "What is a woman?" her response was, "I'm not a doctor." She doesn't lack information. She doesn't lack knowledge. What does she lack? Wisdom. We live in an age of the experts, the guru. You could go on YouTube or the internet right now and see endless resources of podcasts and books, audiobooks, offering us so-called wisdom. There are parenting gurus whose modern gentle parenting techniques are currently, at this moment in our culture, creating more and more emotionally stunted kids and creating such frustration among young parents that more and more young people are giving up on the idea of having kids altogether. There are relationship gurus who give such bad dating advice that it only serves to create more divorces, more fatherless children, more abortions, more poverty, more pain. There are education gurus whose primary strategy for incentivizing learning in the classroom is candy and computer games. It is not because they aren't smart people. It's not even, I don't think, because they are sinister people with a sinister agenda. It is that they lack something. And that something is wisdom. Wisdom. What is wisdom? It is often said that knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing it doesn't belong in fruit salad. In the same way that this visible, natural world that we live in is guided by the laws of nature, gravity, physics, laws of thermodynamics. Well, in the same way that the natural world is guided by laws of nature, the invisible, supernatural world is guided by the laws of wisdom. A deep awareness of the way the world works that results from a deep awareness of the God who created it. You cannot have wisdom apart from God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Thus, we have the book of Proverbs, a book of wisdom. Now, in Proverbs chapter 9, we will get introduced to two ladies who have been introduced in earlier chapters. We have Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly. And these two ladies represent two paths presented in Proverbs. Lady Wisdom represents the path of wisdom that leads to life and blessing. Lady Folly, Lady Foolishness, represents the path of foolishness that leads to death and disgrace. If I were to picture these ladies, they would look something like this. First, Lady Wisdom. I know you probably can't see that. In the middle of that picture is a 110-year-old woman. You see her in the purple jacket? Surrounded by, 40 of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She's the matriarch, 110 years old. There's a real picture from a lady in South Carolina, I believe. Lady Wisdom, what does she look like? Long life, beautiful family, lasting legacy. Here's the beauty of this picture. Her wisdom will long outlive her life. Lady Folly looks like this. I had a way scarier picture. Colby talked me out of it. He was like, there's going to be kids in this service. What does Lady Folly look like? Lady Folly looks like death. Death. So, you can take that off the screen. So with those images in your mind, let's get into the chapter. You could call this chapter, the title of this sermon is A Feast and a Funeral. A feast and a funeral. First, we'll look at the feast. Point number 1. The feast of wisdom leads to a life of fullness and satisfaction. Verses 1 through 6. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her beasts. She has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her young women to call from the highest places in the town. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. To him who lacks sense, she says, come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine that I have mixed. Leave your simple ways and live and walk in the way of insight. So here in these 6 verses, we get a description of Lady Wisdom. Let's look at a few things that Lady Wisdom does. First, Lady Wisdom builds. Verse 1, wisdom has built her house. She has hewn her 7 pillars. This is what wise people know how to do. Wise people know how to build things. Foolish people only know how to tear things down. It's like children who only know how to complain but don't know how to offer helpful solutions. This happens frequently with my kids, especially on snow days when they can't get out of the house. Inevitably, by the early afternoon, we hear the complaints, I'm bored. So bored. Well, then why don't you go to school? So I give them a long list of options. Option number 1, go outside and sled. I don't want to. Go read a book. I really don't want to. Go get some blocks. Build me a tower. I don't want to. Go sweep the front porch. You didn't, you liar. I tried to get him to today. This is a repeat of our earlier conversation. Go do some chores. Go be productive. I don't want to. Well, then what do you want to do? I don't know. Then stop complaining. That's the life of a fool. Only knowing how to complain, only knowing how to criticize, only knowing how to tear down, never knowing how to build. Lady Wisdom is a builder. She builds things. She has built a house, And this house has 7 pillars. Now, a 7-pillared house is a pretty big house. These 7 pillars represent the size and the strength of her house. Its size. Her house is big enough to fit as many people as want to come over. That's what we're about to see. But not only do we see its size, we see its strength. With 7 pillars, is it going to blow over easily? No, it's a strong house. Wisdom is a strong, sturdy foundation on which to build your life. Lady Wisdom is a builder. Next, Lady Wisdom works hard. Verse 2. She has slaughtered her beasts. She has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. So, question for you, especially those of you who are good in the kitchen. How many of you is that? Y'all like to cook? Got a few people. Yeah. Which is easier, cooking from scratch or cooking something pre-made? Pre-made. Way easier. I cook pre-made. I don't cook from scratch. Cooking from scratch, we know, requires a lot more work. A lot more work than just popping something in the oven, popping something in the microwave. But look at Lady Wisdom. She takes cooking from scratch to a whole new level. She doesn't just cook the meat, she slaughters the animals. She doesn't just buy the wine, she mixes her wine herself. She sets the table for a lavish feast. She is busy in the kitchen. The picture is of a woman preparing a massive Thanksgiving feast for a house full of guests. Which tells us the next thing we need to see about Lady Wisdom. Lady Wisdom is generous. She's generous. She has slaughtered her beasts. She has mixed her wine. She has set her table. She's not serving the scraps. This isn't chicken nuggets and green beans. She's serving the best. This is filet mignon wrapped in bacon with shrimp on the side. Mashed potatoes. This is why we don't have kids in the service. They just can't appreciate good cooking. She is generous. The book of James tells us the same thing about wisdom. James 1:5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives wisdom generously to all without reproach. Wisdom is generous. She is always ready to share. All you got to do is what? Ask. All you got to do is ask. Verses 3-6 show us that Lady Wisdom extends the invitation for her feast to all. She has sent out her young women, verse 3, to call from the highest places in town. Why would you go to the highest place in town? To get a message out. Get the amplification, right? So they're going to the high places to make this announcement. What is the announcement? Whoever is simple. Whoever. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. To him who lacks sense, she says, come, eat of my bread, drink of my wine that I have mixed. So she's inviting anyone and everyone. This is not an exclusive invite. There's no VIP list to get into this party. It's an open invitation and all are welcome. Anyone who wants to come partake of wisdom is invited to come, eat, and be filled. But this all-inclusive invitation does come with conditions. Verse 6, what's the condition? Leave your simple ways and walk in the way of insight. Most important invitation of all is in the middle of the verse. What does Lady Wisdom invite them to do? Live. Live. Leave your simple ways and live. Now, the fact that Lady Wisdom is inviting anyone who wants to come into her house to partake, one of the things that shows us is that the default position of humanity is foolishness. Like if we have to set aside our foolishness in order to eat with Lady Wisdom, that means that the default position of humanity is foolishness. You don't have to teach children to be fools. You have to teach them wisdom. Proverbs 22:15. Folly is bound up in the heart of a child. It is densely concentrated in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it out of them. So fools is how we come into the world. But the good news is that Lady Wisdom still invites fools to come. Leave your simple ways and live. Now here's the point of this image in verses 1 through 6, the point of Lady Wisdom's feast. On Thanksgiving Day, after you've had your turkey and your ham and your mashed potatoes and your sweet potato casserole, and Bill is nodding like the list goes on, how do you feel? How do you feel after you've feasted? You feel like the turkey, stuffed. Right? You're full, you're satisfied, you're content, and quite literally, you are at rest. You're ready to take a nap. That's the kind of feeling wisdom produces in your life. When you go the path of wisdom, when you eat at wisdom's table, you experience fullness of life, contentment, and peace. So there's a beautiful picture of Lady Wisdom and what she has to offer. But Solomon, king of Israel, author of Proverbs, he gives us this sobering reminder starting in verse 7. And it's this: wisdom can't be forcefully imposed. Wisdom can't be forcefully imposed. Lady Wisdom will not force feed anyone at her table. If you've ever tried to help a fool, you know this firsthand. Can you make them be wise? No. It's like feeding a toddler. If they tighten their lips, if they turn their head and swat their arms, can you get it in their mouth? No. You can't feed them. And those who refuse to eat at wisdom's table can't be force-fed. Now, just a quick caveat on that point. There is one group of people who can have wisdom imposed on them. Who is it? Little children. Little children. That's why you discipline them when they're young. You do it when they're young. You shouldn't have too many problems when they're old. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, if you do it when they're young, when he is old, will not depart from them. So impose wisdom when they're young. If you miss that window, you can't really impose it easily later. So here in this section, we have two contrasts. Contrast between the wise and the fool. First, in verse 7, we see the wise love instruction and correction. The fool hates it. Verse 7. Whoever corrects a scoffer gets himself abuse, and he who reproves a wicked man incurs injury. In other words, correcting someone who's not open to correction brings more harm on you than it does on them. You've experienced this before, I'm sure. You try to give someone advice. You're just giving a little advice. That's all you're trying to do. You're trying to be helpful. And what do? Bite your head off. How dare you? How dare you have anything negative to say about me? You're the one trying to be helpful. You're the one trying to provide the constructive criticism. But because the person is a fool and can't receive the correction, they take their anger out on you, and you're the one who gets abused. Wisdom can't be forcefully imposed. Look at verses 8 and 9. Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning. So the wise man, because he's wise, he knows he's not perfect. He knows he's going to make mistakes, and so he's open to constructive correction. The fool, on the other hand, arrogantly thinks he knows everything. Never met anybody like that. Thinks he doesn't need help and is appalled that someone would correct him or criticize him. So in some sense, wisdom and foolishness really comes down to this, the difference between the humble and the proud. We should, as people of wisdom, love when people who love us give us loving correction. We should love it. We should love when people with knowledge and wisdom correct us, rebuke us. Now, my old pastor at Parkwood in Gastonia, he was like known for this. He's been a pastor for 35 years, excellent preacher, great leader, extraordinary wisdom. The church tripled, has almost quadrupled in his tenure there as pastor. But if you came on staff as a pastor, pridefully thinking that you already knew everything, you weren't going to last very long. He was pretty much constantly giving constructive feedback that was intended to help you and grow you as a pastor, but it wasn't always easy. 2 examples. I think I've told you this one before. When I had been there a little less than a year, I was a student pastor, preaching weekly for the first time in my life, which if you've never done it, is way harder than it looks. Preaching, having a sermon every week is grueling over time. So he sits me down along with our other, I was a high school pastor, we had a middle school pastor as well. He sits us down and he says, guys, listen, you guys are preaching too long. I didn't hear any amens. It's a good thing. He says, guys, y'all are preaching way too long. You're preaching close to 40 minutes. And listen, you're just not good enough to preach that long. Now, you think that hurt my pride a little bit? Yeah. Did I know he was right? Yeah, I definitely did. Colby, preaching too long. No, I'm just kidding. Now, I could have taken that. I could have, whined about that, gotten mad about that. Or I could say, he's probably right. He's been doing this a lot longer than I have. He's a way better preacher than I am. He's wiser than I am. I'm going to listen to him, and I'm going to shorten things down. And because of that, I better learned how to get to the heart of the matter in preaching and have become a better preacher as a result. Another time, I was in a meeting with our pastor, and we were meeting with all the adult leaders in student ministry because we were changing our approach to student mission trips. And we had this big meeting to let everybody know about the change that was coming, and my job was to open the meeting and share some information about why these changes were taking place. Church people love change. You know that, right? So we have this meeting. The next day, he calls me into his office and he asks me a question. Sit down in the chair, Matt. Okay, great. I got a question for you. What was the point of the meeting yesterday? I said, I don't know, but I'm guessing I missed it. I kind of looked at him blankly because I knew he was going somewhere specific and I didn't know where that was. So he clarified, what was the point of the meeting yesterday? Information or inspiration? I said, I thought it was information. He said, that's where you messed up. The point of the meeting was inspiration. We want to inspire these leaders to embrace the change that we're asking them to do, to create. Now, there were times, because of this sort of back and forth, that the correction could feel like nitpicking, or it could feel discouraging. But at the end of the day, when I look back over my time as a student pastor at Parkwood, I am incredibly thankful for every single bit of correction that he gave me. Why? Because it shaped me into the pastor that I am now. If you hate correction, here's the warning. You stay a fool. If you hate correction, you stay a fool. But if you're open to it, if you receive it, even a wise man will be wiser still. Next thing we see in verses 10 through 12. this contrast of the wise man and the fool. The wise man fears the Lord and lives. The fool fears no one and dies. Verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insights. For by me your days will be multiplied, and your years will be added to your life. If you are wise for yourself. If you scoff, you alone will bear it. Now we see this phrase in verse 10, the fear of the Lord. What does that mean, the fear of the Lord? The fear of the Lord is the acknowledgement. This is all it is. It's the acknowledgement that you will answer to someone beyond yourself. Think about two different types of situations at work. You may have worked in both of these environments before. Think about a situation at work where there's no oversight, there's no accountability, there's no checking in, there's no following up, and there's no evaluation at the end of the job, at the end of the project. How are most people going to handle that situation? They're going to slack off. They're not going to take their work seriously. They're not going to care about the final results. But on the other hand, if you have a boss who you know is going to be checking in, who you know is going to be following up on your work, who you know is going to be evaluating the final product, are you going to pay more attention to it? Are you going to be more diligent in the task? That's the point of authority. And the wise man knows he's not his own authority. God is over him. And in the end, God will judge him. Therefore, he's wise. He's prudent. He's careful and attentive to how he lives his life. And the result for those who live wise is in verse 11. For by me, your days will be multiplied, and years will be added to your life. What is the result of God's good authority? Is it that we feel afraid and intimidated? No, it's that we be blessed and experience life. Your days will be multiplied. Years will be added to your life. The question is, can you humble yourself enough to listen to him, to embrace his wisdom? Because here's the final warning of verse 12. If you are wise for yourself. If you scoff, you alone will bear it. In other words, whatever life you choose, whether you choose the life of wisdom or the life of foolishness, it is you who chooses it. And it is you who will answer for it. The fool, try as he might to make excuses and blame everyone else around him, in the end, he has no one to blame but himself. He alone will bear the shame of his foolishness. Now, point number 3, verses 13 through 18, bring us the contrasting image to Lady Wisdom that show us Lady Folly. Point number 3. The way of folly looks enticing but leads to death. So we saw with Lady Wisdom, she was a builder. She was a hard worker. She was hospitable. She was generous. She was inviting. And the goal of her invitation is life. Come to her and live. Lady Folly is the opposite. First, notice Lady Folly, verse 13. She is loud. It says the woman Folly is loud. This is in contrast to the description of the godly woman that we see in the New Testament. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 4 says that a woman should adorn herself with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. Now, when it says that Lady Folly is loud, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's talkative or she's socially outgoing. We're not talking about a personality type here. What it means is that she is a woman who is looking for attention. She is desperate to be the center of attention. There's all different kinds of ways to do that. You can do it through a loud, bombastic personality. You can also do it through crude or crass language. Or you can do it through the next descriptor. She is, verse 13, seductive. a woman who draws attention to herself through promiscuity. But one way to spot Lady Folly, end of verse 13, not only is she loud, not only is she lewd, she is also shameless. It says she knows nothing. Now that doesn't mean she's ditzy. When it says she knows nothing, it's not talking about her intellect. What it actually means is she knows no boundaries. She is shameless. There's nothing that is off limits for her. She lacks decorum. She has no true north by which she is living her life. She has no foundational guiding principles for life day to day. She'll do anything. And now here's the scary part as we approach the end of this piece of wisdom. Here's the scary part. Like Lady Wisdom, Lady Folly also invites people to her house. Verse 14. She sits at the door of her house. She takes a seat on the highest places of the town, just like Lady Wisdom, calling to those who pass by, who are going straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And to him who lacks sense, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Now here's the point of Lady Folly also calling out, just as Lady Wisdom does. It's an unfortunate point. Foolishness will come looking for you even when you're not looking for foolishness. There are people in verse 15 that we're told are going straight on their way. Straight on their way. One of the common contrasts throughout the book of Proverbs is the straight versus the crooked. Crooked speech, crooked paths. These are people in Proverbs who are up to no good. But the straight path, in verse 15, the straight path is the good path. So in verse 15, are these people doing anything wrong? No, they're going straight. They're going straight on their way. But Lady Folly is calling to them, trying to distract them, trying to pull them off the path. You never know where it could come from or when it could strike, but the opportunity to play the fool can sneak up on you at any moment, even when you had no plans or intentions of doing so. That's why Peter reminds us, 1 Peter 5, 8, and 9, be sober-minded, be watchful. Why? Your adversary, who? The devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. The command at the beginning of the next verse is resist him. Why? Because when the devil calls or when Lady Folly calls, the destination is already determined. Verse 18. What's the destination for those who follow Lady Folly's footsteps? Death. Now, just like Satan isn't stupid, Lady Folly isn't an idiot. She doesn't say, hey, follow me to death. Now look how Folly entices her followers. Verse 17. Stolen water is sweet. Ooh, it tastes so good. And bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Lady Folly entices with what is forbidden and what is unknown. Here's a good criteria for whether or not something is wise. What if everyone I know found out about this? What effect would it have on them and on me? Secrecy is the enemy of wisdom. If you're doing something that requires secrecy, then you're probably walking the way of the fool. And the same is true with things that are forbidden. That's what she means when she says stolen water is sweet. And even as Christians, we do actually have to acknowledge this. In the fallen world in which we live, Stolen water really is sweeter. I often say, a sandwich tastes better when someone else made it for me. Right? Things that are forbidden, they naturally have an enticing element to them. And the Bible doesn't pretend otherwise. The Bible isn't so naive to suggest that sin isn't pleasurable for a time. To the sinful heart, that which is forbidden is enticing. And this is why countless people just like you and me, no better, no worse, they throw away their lives in pursuit of things that will destroy them. Because for the moment, that which is secret, that which is forbidden, is pleasurable. And yet, in the end, where does it lead? Verse 18, it's a chilling verse. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. Sheol is the place of the dead. It's the grave. And as this last verse closes out the opening section of Proverbs, it's like you can hear the father pleading with his son, pleading with his children. Don't choose that house. Don't go to that house. Lady Wisdom is a house of hospitality, but Lady Folly is a house of horrors. Her basement is full of bones from all her previous victims. It smells like perfume at the front door, but in the basement, it is filled with the stench of death and decomposition. Don't step foot in her house. Because if you do, you may never come out. So I want to close with 3 very brief points of application here. I'm sorry, just two. Just two. Number 1, flee from folly. Flee from folly. In Genesis, in like 2 years from now, when we get toward the end of the book, we'll see the story of Joseph's life. Joseph becomes chief servant in Potiphar's house. Potiphar's wife thinks that Joseph is a handsome young man. And so what does she do? She plays Lady Folly. And when she does, what does Joseph do? Don't answer. Does he entertain it for a while? Does he flirt around because he thinks it's fun? No. What does he do, Brandon? He runs. He runs for the hills. Even though it meant imprisonment for him. Don't dilly-dally with Lady Folly. Flee. Flee from folly. You won't regret it. Second, final. Love wisdom. Love wisdom. She made you a home-cooked meal. Not the cheap stuff. The good stuff. The filet mignon wrapped in bacon with shrimp on the side. In other words, don't just tolerate wisdom. Don't just do the wise thing because, oh, well, it's the right thing to do. I might as well. No, love wisdom. Love her. She desires to bless you. She desires to make your life full of joy and meaning and purpose. Love the way of wisdom. It will not disappoint. And more than that, 1 Corinthians chapter 1 tells us that the wisdom of God has come into the world. The wisdom of God has been embodied in the person of who? Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 1:30, Christ became to us wisdom from God. If you look back up at the first few verses of chapter 9 that describe Lady Wisdom, and you plug Christ into her place, look at these beautiful realities. It is Christ who is the firm foundation on whom we build our lives. It is Christ who calls out and invites anyone who will listen to come and live. It is Christ who invites us, verse 5, to come, eat of my bread and drink of my wine through his body and blood at the cross. And it is Christ who invites us to forsake the foolishness of the world and follow him and live. For how long? Forever. You talk about adding days to the end of your life. How about no end? Life forever. Flee from folly. Love wisdom. Let's pray.